So hello, everyone, and welcome to United Way Oxford's Community United Conversation Series. This is the evening we're going to be discussing children and youth well-being, resilience, and mental health throughout this COVID pandemic. My name is Kelly Gilson, and I'm the Executive Director with United Way Oxford. And I am thrilled that you are joining us in our community. And I'm thrilled that we have these wonderful panelists joining us as well. So just to tee this up a little bit real quick, I will tell you that this is something that United Way Oxford started to do last year as a way to be able to reach out to community during, of course, the pandemic. So this is a virtual format where we can share information, we can talk about timely and interesting social services in our community. We could talk about some of the issues that we are facing, that community members are facing, and that we can make connections to resources or to each other. And so this is really about building what we call our community capacity and being able to share and inform and just help our community in one of the many ways that United Way tries to help our community. And so for those of you that are not familiar with United Way, we are United Way Oxford, and we are 100% local. So our work is done in Oxford County. Our resources and our investments and our efforts are all for the citizens in Oxford County. And we mobilize volunteers, and we just have an amazing donor base so that we have investment dollars to help move people from poverty to possibility. We help build strong and healthy communities, and we certainly have a focus area of helping kids be all that they can be and making sure that they have what they need to thrive and to go on to become healthy, well-adjusted adults in society. And so those are some of the investment areas that we make. We make our donor dollars invested in. And we also have been blessed over this last year to have over $500,000 of additional dollars to put out into the community, because we know that the impact of COVID has been severe, and for many, the impact has really been quite overwhelming. And so that kind of segues a little bit into why we're here this evening. That we know that this pandemic, we've heard a lot of people say that we are all in the same storm, and we know that we are. This is a worldwide pandemic, obviously, and we are all facing it, but we're facing it in different ways, and we have different tools in our toolbox. And quite frankly, to sort of not sound too cliche, we're all in different boats. So some are in a yacht, and some are in a dinghy, and some are like hanging on to driftwood, and everything in between. And so this evening, when we're talking about children and youth, I think it's a great opportunity to talk about all of our children and all of our youth, and the impact that this has had as parents as well. This has been a difficult year, and we all want to do our best to make sure that we're there and helping the best way we can. So I'm thrilled that you're joining us. I thank you for connecting. If you didn't hear in the very beginning, I'm going to tell you that this is a relatively new format, kind of, for us. And these wonderful volunteers are all helping us on their own time and from their own locations. So we know that internet stability is sometimes a challenge, and barking dogs and crying babies and everything in between. And frankly, that's all okay, because that is how we all seem to be in these days. So it would be reflective of real life if things go, slightly sideways throughout this, but we'll try our best to keep us on track. We're going to go till about 8:30. We have a presentation that will be about an hour, a little bit more, and then you will be able to do some questions in our chat box for the community members if you'd like. So before I get into some of the rules, because of course there's always going to be rules, I'm going to actually take a moment to do a territorial acknowledgement. And this is something that United Way has been doing, our United Way, for the last little while. We really feel compelled to learn more and to make this a priority in understanding. And if there was ever a time when this is important, I would say this last few days has certainly exemplified that when we think about the discovery of 215 little ones that were found out west in BC. And so as I read this, I urge you to think of not only where we are here in our community, but to keep them in their families in your thoughts. So we will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the territorial territory of the Anishinaabeg, Lenape, and the Haudenosaunee. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic and current contribution to this place. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made and are making, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and our country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the current contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. So I think that was extra important here this evening. And so now on to your rules. I just wanted to let you know we are going to be speaking about well-being, mental health, coping in general. That's the focus as it pertains to children, youth of all ages. So please don't think this is just, up to 18 and we call it a day. Once a parent, always a parent. And so we have broad definitions of what youth might be. So this is for parents and for caregivers and community members. But I do want you to know that the panelists are not going to be able to address specific questions, very specific concerns, or things that are uniquely personal, like a specific school or a teacher experience or anything like that. This session is being recorded. And so the only people on the recording are the people you see in front of you, myself and the panelists. Everyone else, your video is off and your mic is off. So you're not going to be recorded, but I do want you to know that, again, you have the ability to ask questions via the chat box, and we will be monitoring that. We have staff who are graciously monitoring that this evening, and they're going to be posting and responding and putting up, whether it's connections, whether it's websites, phone numbers, different things as the evening goes on as well. The last thing, I guess two last things I want to say, this is not a political evening, and this is not about politics or any kind of provincial orders. So we're not going to get into some of that stuff, which I know sometimes in people's minds is kind of connected to the COVID thing. That's not what we're here about this evening. So we're not going to go down that path. It's really about well-being and our role as parents and caregivers. And then I do want to say, if there's something that bothers you, that triggers you, that is at all upsetting, which is not our goal, please feel free to, if you're overwhelmed at all, dial off and we can reach out and we can make sure you get connected to some assistance. So with all of that, you're not here to listen to me. You are here to listen to our amazing panelists. So I am going to now turn it over and ask them to introduce themselves. And so, Kara, can we start with you, please?
Sure, we can. So my name is Kara Van Claveren. I'm the Supervisor of Family and Children's Services at Oxford County in the Human Services Department. A large part of my role there includes overseeing the Early On Child and Family Centers.
And we're going to come back and learn a little more about Early On specifically in a few minutes. And so, Lucy, you're next.
So yes, I'm Lucy Alge, and I am a social worker in the Child and Adolescent Program at Woodstock Hospital. I have been with the program now, actually this week, Thursday, it'll be 19 years that I am with Woodstock Hospital. So yeah, thank you and welcome everybody.
Thank you very much. And I know my screen probably looks different than yours, but I'm just going to keep going around the circle. So Melanie, you're up.
Thanks, Kelly. Good evening, everybody. I'm Melanie Ferdinand. I'm the Manager of Professional Services for the Thames Valley District School Board, and I have the responsibility for directly managing our team of school counselors, First Nation Métis Inuit counselors, social workers, and psychological services staff who are providing direct mental health supports in our schools.
Thank you. I'm going to segue over to Andrea.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Andrea Harvey. I sit with Melanie at the Thames Valley District School Board. My role is the mental health lead. I am relatively new to the school board. I joined them back in November, and prior to that, I was at Woodstock Hospital as the outpatient mental health lead. So shifting over to education is new for me. So a large part of my role is really around promoting mental health and well-being and protecting mental health of both our students and our educators. So it's really about mentally healthy classrooms, social emotional learning, and setting the foundation for everyone.
Fantastic. Now I'm deking to my left. So Teresa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Teresa Stock. I'm the clinical supervisor for Welkin Child and Youth Mental Wellness. That is a very new role for me. I started in March of this year, and I am not new to child and youth mental health. I've been privileged to be working with various agencies for, I would say, about 20 years now. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Sandra.
Well, thanks, Kelly. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandra Savage, and I'm the mental health lead and supervisor of social work services at the London District Catholic School Board. In this role, I work with our school teams and system staff and parents and students really to really build our collective capacity to care for our mental health and well-being in our schools, and understanding that that's so important for learning and for living outside of school as well. So very pleased to be here, and welcome everyone.
Excellent. And I think actually that's a great way to kind of start the evening. This is all about building our collective capacity as parents, as caregivers, but also as community members and community partners. And I know we have a variety of people on the line. And so thank you for being with us. And for the audience, I'm just going to tell you right now, we have facilitated questions. And so I'm going to start in just a moment with our first, but we've also tried to set this up so that it is a casual conversation. And so I want you to know that we will certainly be encouraging all of our panelists to kind of jump in and float out as they have something that, might trigger for them that they want to add to the conversation. And I think that's how we can get great dialogue. So first question of the hour is, I'm going to start with Teresa, and then we're going to kind of layer out from there. But Teresa, how can parents and caregivers support the emotional well-being of children and youth at home during this time?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly.
Simple to start.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and two main ways are what I'd like to focus on to answer that. The first is, as parents and caregivers, to take care of yourself. That you've probably noticed that when we are with somebody who appears to be agitated or stressed or tense, that we tend to tense up ourselves, that we tend to take that on and be that way ourselves. And when we're with people who are more calm and regulated, then we tend to feel more calm as well. So the very best way that parent can support their children is for them to be able to fill up their emotional cup, to use their self-care strategies, to ask for support, to be able to be with their kids. And that's difficult right now because a lot of the ways that we have used to cope with stress aren't available to us right now. So going out, entertainment, seeing some music, going to movies, seeing friends face to face, those things, going to a gym, those things aren't available. So it really does make a difference if we can find those ways that fill us up, even for 5-10 minutes a day, that's yours. So whether it's a walk or a phone call to a friend, or reaching out for professional support and help. That is the number one way, I believe, that parents can be a support to their kids, is if they're paying attention to their own emotional well-being. So after that, when you're all filled up and you're feeling like you're good, the second thing that I think is really valuable to keep in mind is that validating your kids' experience and their feelings is a very, very important tool that every parent has and can do. We know that every family and every person in the family has a unique experience of this pandemic, and those experiences change day to day. You know, our way we're coping can change day to day, and all of them are valid. I think that's really important to remember. So when your child is upset about missing a school trip, they have every right to those feelings of sadness and being upset. And there have been so many events that we've missed, that kids have missed. And whether that's sports teams or band or school trips, all the way up to graduation ceremonies, there's been a lot that our kids have coped with. And as parents, we often want to stop our kids from hurting. We want to take that hurt away. And that's a beautiful intention. It is to take the hurt away from our kids. And so we say things like, well, at least you have next year. Or you shouldn't be sad about a trip. Some families don't even have internet. So statements like that are very well intentioned. We want to take the hurt away and keep our kids from feeling that pain. I think we also know as adults that when we call a friend, what we want is a response more like, I'm sorry you're sad. I'm sorry you're hurting. Thank you for telling me. I'm here. It must have been hard. Responses like that shift the conversation. They help kids to know that we're heard and that we can cope with these big feelings, and we don't need to cope with them alone. So I think those are the two main things for me. Looking after yourself as a parent so that you're able to be available, you're able to provide a predictable environment for your kids. And I don't know what you got there. Okay.
Highlighting nuggets. Yeah.
Okay. And to be able to know that you don't need to fix it. You don't need to take the hurt away. The best gift you can give your child is to let them know that you are in there with them, that you can support them, and that they can cope with these big feelings and they don't need to cope with them alone.
That's really great parenting advice.
Thanks, Kelly.
And you know what? And I think I can speak on behalf of not maybe every parent out there, but sadly, I know I have more than once used the perhaps less favorable parenting tactics. So I think
we all have, right? And this isn't, and I should say, this isn't about the all the time, right? This is like most of the time. Try and get most.
Great, really some great nuggets and a great way to actually start, I think, this conversation, Teresa. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to open it up and see who would like to sort of piggyback on some of Teresa's points and maybe expand a bit on some of your thoughts around that. Kira.
Well, I think first of all, I would encourage parents to give themselves some grace. Right now it's hard. We've got parents out there that have become parents for the first time during a pandemic, a time where they've not been able to gather with friends and family to celebrate their little one, or to find comfort in the company of other parents who are on the same or similar parenthood journey that they're on. Some people are trying to balance working at home with caring for toddlers and preschoolers, both that require much attention. Some are carrying the worry that if they take their child outside of the home to a childcare center or to a school environment, that they're exposing their child to, you know, a health concern, and that we are all experiencing these circumstances differently. Some practical things I might encourage any parent, which would echo a lot of things that Teresa was saying. You know, number one, take care of yourself. You can't do anything without having some self-care in there. Maintain a regular routine at home, right? You know, eating dinners together and opening up for conversation and you know, getting lots of good sleep and all of those things. Talking and listening and encouraging, you know, that back and forth dialogue about, you know, how your kids are feeling, how you're feeling, right? And really validating those things. You know, I know we're tired of the screen as our mode of communication, but you know, maybe it's not for a work purpose that you're signing on to the computer. Maybe it's to have lunch with a friend where you just get to see their face and have a conversation. And then get outside and play, get some vitamin D on your face and just be playful and find those joyful moments in the day. And kind of lastly would be to reach out to the resources in the community, including those that are on the panel. There's some really great people in our community that are willing and able and ready to listen to the stories and to be in the storm with you.
Which is, I think, so important why we're doing this evening, because for folks that have perhaps never thought about reaching out for services, it can be overwhelming. You don't even maybe know where to start or what is available. And we do have some great programs, services, staff, volunteers who are there to help. Absolutely. Thanks, Kara. Would anyone else like to add on?
Melanie,
Andrea.
did you want to go? You know, I think I want to just piggyback what Teresa said. I think, and a big piece of messaging we've been doing at the school board is the concept of empathy, right? And sitting with someone versus, you know, feeling like we need to fix something, you know, either as a parent or as a professional. You know, I think of my own son and how he feels, and often we want to go in and help, you know, how can we make that better, right? And more now than ever, I think we're just sitting with, and we're just naming those emotions, and we're just riding the wave, right? And that's okay. I think that's a part of the work. And I think this is where, you know, despite all of the disparities, we're actually learning how to do that. And I think before we were quick to snowball and try to always fix. So I think it's really important to just sit and empathize is a big takeaway.
Absolutely. And that I'm sure pertains to not just how we interact with our children, but friends and family and neighbors and everyone in between, co-workers.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lucy, I think you had your hand up.
Right. So the other piece to keep in mind that we also encourage parents is to, if we do see a change in behavior, right? If you see a significant change in your child's behavior, their demeanor, their way of coping, even as we're going through this pandemic, if you do notice that, right, we really encourage paying attention to those changes and just checking in and seeing how they're doing. You know, it could be related to very many things, right? So not just the child coming to the parent, but the parent also having that awareness and just picking up on even just subtle changes in the child or the adolescent, because they don't always tell you. Well, most times they won't tell you really, and you're just really trying to feel them out. And if there's really significant changes, right, that you pick up on, really important to keep that right front and center as we're navigating together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, because we have wonderful programs and supports there. Absolutely. Sandra.
I just wanted to also add sort of a balance to that. This is a time where we know children and youth particularly are experiencing a lot of distress. They're just generally, and for many of us, our sort of usual level of sort of nervousness or anxiousness or worry is a little bit higher than it usually is. And so it's important that we kind of understand that from day to day, those things will fluctuate a little. I think just to be mindful, I think Lucy's talking about sort of sustained, interruption in enjoying life and participating in things, but being able as a parent to give yourself some compassion for when you're not having the best day. And sometimes we can't figure out why. And your children will experience that as well. And, we really want to just be able to think, I really liked Kelly's analogy of being in a boat in the storm or on a piece of driftwood or something, but we're kind of riding through this storm, each of us with our own, waves that come to us. And so if we can kind of expect that, it's going to be up and down, it's going to be a little wavy. And I think the most important, this is a bit technical, but protective factor or sort of way to help us and our children through that is to try to maintain a strong connection with them. And I think when Andrea was talking about empathy, that really is important way to maintain that sense of connection. Our social connections, our family connections with the people close to us and those in our circle, in our world, that has contributes so much to us feeling well and to navigating the ups and downs and the stresses, because that sense of not being alone, which I think Teresa talked about, just being able to listen and have that empathy. That's what we all need as the adults during this time, but particularly for children. And it's a great gift we can give them if we can be with them and just remember that the connection's probably the important thing in this moment. And if we do that connection, then we can get to problem solving or we can get to other things after that.
Thank you. I'm just going to remind people that there are some things being posted in the chat box that are resources. So different programs or websites that people might find really helpful. And Sandra, I'm about to go to Melanie, but I thought, your comments were really interesting. Not that we like to think that there are good things that come out of a pandemic. It's obviously been a horrific time for so many. But there have been some interesting lessons that maybe as humans we've taken away. And we were talking about this just before we started about what matters and where some of our priorities are, and sort of reflecting on what we want from life and from our families. And some of that time together is, I think we all now recognize might be perhaps more precious than we realized in our busy lives in a different time. Not to say that there aren't still so many stresses and again, some so much more than others. But Melanie, would you like to wrap up anything on this particular question?
Yeah, thanks for that, Kelly. You must have been reading my mind when you said that, because as I'm listening to everybody, and we all recognize that there is a level of distress that we have all experienced to some degree. We also recognize that distress may be disproportionate for certain students and families. But we also know, as we've journeyed through this, if any of you have been outside and have seen families biking together or going for a hike together, or spending time in ways that maybe you didn't see about a year and a half ago. And it has been a long journey. There has been distress, but we have also found those moments to hold, those moments of joy that you spoke about, Kelly. And as Teresa spoke about, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of validating each other's experience. And that is so important. This isn't about, your kids don't want you to fix it for them. They want you to be there and listen to them. And if you can do that, as Sandra said, you stay connected. And that is what's going to be so important for their mental health and well-being moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we're going to actually segue just a little bit because I think there, and I know people are very familiar with the school boards and probably the hospital, but there are two organizations on this evening that not everyone may be familiar with. Both have had name changes. I mean, just different things. So, Kara, I'm going to go back to you. And we don't want to forget little ones, and early on is all about the little ones. And so there are great services for parents and babies and toddlers as well. And Oxford County has recently taken over the early on family programs and services. So could you tell us just a little bit about what early on is, how you're currently supporting some families, like what you're currently doing, and moving forward, because I know you have great plans moving forward, and summer is coming, and things are going to look different.
Yeah, they sure are, and we're holding on to hope that that different looking program is going to come sooner rather than later. So early on child and family centers offer free programs for families, parents or caregivers with children aged 0 to 6 years. So it could be a grandparent, it could be a parent, it could be a home child care provider. And in days where we would be offering in-person programs, you can come and join us for activities like reading and storytelling, sing-alongs and games. Lots of different activities would be set up in the room. You can also get advice from professionals trained in early childhood development, find out about other family services in the community, and connect with other families. Currently, because we're not hosting in-person programs, we are offering online programs through our virtual village. So we have programs like the infant massage program and Bringing Up Baby, which are really geared to that 0 to 12 month age group. We have a Wisdom and Whimsy program that we're running in partnership with the Woodingford Lodge. So it's an intergenerational program where we have residents join us for some songs and rhymes and stories on Mondays. And we've partnered with Children's Aid Society of Oxford County to offer the Triple P Parenting Program chats. So looking at some specific topics, parenting topics that might come up, and just having an informal chat about it. I believe that in the chat, it's been posted. Yeah, CAS hosts like a full Triple P program. These are just little kind of tip sheets and tidbits. So not a lot of pressure, just an opportunity for a conversation. And then we have other programs that support early literacy development, language development, gross motor skills, and parenting strategies. Going forward, we're hoping to be out in the communities across Oxford County, hopefully in the coming weeks. We intend to be joining the Ox on the Run, so the program with Oxford County Library to hit all corners of Oxford County over the summer. So we are coming out. It's just a matter of time, and we can't wait for that announcement.
Excellent. Well, great example that it takes a virtual village now to raise a child as well. But lots of people have like new babies or new parents over this last time, and they don't have even the family support that maybe they once did. So a great resource. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to go to Teresa. So I think that there'll be parents and caregivers watching that may not be familiar with Welkin, which was formerly the Oxford Elgin Child and Youth Center. And I know you gave a little overview in the intro, but could you share a little bit about what Welkin is and what Welkin does so that people can understand what that service is in the community?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. And yes, I'm getting to know the programs and services myself as well. So Welkin is the lead agency for child and youth mental health and wellness for Oxford and Elgin counties. We serve children and youth and their families for youth up to age 17, so 0 to 17 and families. There's no cost to any of the services. You don't need a health card, and you can call intake and or visit our website where there's an online referral form for parents to fill out. Some of the programs that parents might find interesting and that they can access right away are groups and workshops. So we run a circle of security group, which really focuses on that concept we talked about before, just being with our kids and understanding what gets in the way of that sometimes. So that's an excellent group. And also we have workshops as well. So to be able to highlight some different challenges parents have. So those services are virtual right now, hopefully being able to be in person soon. We also have counseling for children and their families up to age 17. And the Parent Caregiver Hub, which is a virtual space that's offered twice a month, once in the afternoon and once in the evening. And you can also call our intake to be able to do that as well. And it's a place for parents to get to know each other, to hear from other parents, to learn from other parents. It can be so isolating to be a parent. You don't know what's in that wide range of normal, because it's a very wide range. And just to hear and get that validation from other parents that they're struggling too, and they're struggling right along with you. So that's been a really important service, and it's been really great. They also connect parents with resources in the community as well. Our quick access therapy service is the last one I'll mention. And what I think is so important is if, as a parent, you have any concerns or questions at all, to give that number a call, because kids are all individuals and unique. You can think, oh, there's a change in my child's sleeping pattern, and then your child's going through a growth spurt, or they're a teenager and they're suddenly sleeping till 12, and like things like that happen all the time. So if you're concerned, please call, and then a therapist is able to talk you through and get to know your unique family and your unique child situation, and answer any questions and point you in the right direction. So that's an easy online form, referral form to fill in, and a phone call, and we can get you support right away. And if we're not the right service, we will find the right service.
That's fantastic. So that little bit of that, there's no wrong door. So if someone reaches out to you and for whatever reason, the hospital is going to be the better organization, or maybe it's early on, or one of the newer programs through Children's Aid, et cetera, you can kind of handhold so that they get to where they need to go, right? And when people are upset themselves, it can be overwhelming to know where to start. So I think that's such a valuable message that if you think you need help, reach out, and then someone will. If that's not the right one, don't you worry about a thing. Someone's going to get you to where you need to be. So that actually kind of is a nice segue, because you've actually answered this, but I want to open it up for others, because we know that the parents really are, all people are doing the best. They're doing their very best to try to be there for their kids, but some really might want more support or guidance, or just feel that they need that extra. And so is there anyone else who'd like to jump in to talk about some supports that are available for parents that really might feel they just need a little bit more? Kara?
Yes, I don't mind jumping back in a little bit. I would say, so, if somebody's concerned about their child's development right now and what that looks like, there's some tools that are available. Early On has some on their website, in particular the early years check-in. So if you've been at home and you haven't, been out and kind of doing that, checking out what other parents are doing with their kids, and is my child developing in the way that they would be, that's a place to start. If there are any concerns about your child's development, or how they're progressing, and you're looking at placing your child into childcare, needing to place your child into childcare, that Oxford County Human Services manages the childcare waitlist in Oxford County. So you can check out Oxford County's website. And if you are a parent that has a child with special needs and are considering placing your child into childcare, there are supports for you and your child through Child and You Oxford. So those are some resources for sure that are available and exist and are free for families. So
that's so helpful, because parents aren't seeing other parents even to sometimes get the tip on who to go to for something, right? Like, those those schoolyard conversations that maybe folks have when they have little ones. Is there anyone else that wanted to add something about sort of some parenting support and some help?
So similar to what Welcome provides, we provide somewhat similar, not the groups, because Welcome does those very well, but we do sort of alongside the child, we do provide the parenting support as is needed and required based on sort of presentation. So we do through that window or through that lens, we offer sort of the parenting piece, not the group work like I mentioned, but very much on an individual basis, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of come back, not quite full circle, but we earlier, you all talked a lot about sort of just sitting in that space and communication and being there. And so I think everyone really wants to understand how their children are feeling. And sometimes it can be hard to know what to ask. Like, how was your day? Good. What'd you do? Nothing. Or how to really like, so what questions are good questions to ask? How to really listen, not just ask, but to listen. And sometimes little ones aren't even good at communicating. I mean, they might do it through their behavior as opposed to through their words. And so does anyone want to share some maybe tips or tricks on how to have some engaging conversations, I guess maybe at different stages in childhood development, but like just some things that can help parents try and get that conversation going? Sandra.
Well, this is a very general thing, and that I've talked with lots of parents about, and it's about engaging in a conversation, a check-in, just how are you doing? And often doing that while you're engaged in an activity together. When you're on a walk, when you're in the car going to the grocery store, when you're cooking something in the kitchen together, it takes the pressure off that intensive eye to eye. How are you doing? And I'm worried something's wrong, you know. And it allows a little space to communicate in that way, because you're connecting, because you're in the same place together, you're doing an activity together, and it allows the conversation to flow naturally. And I think how much we all really appreciate somebody saying, how are you doing? And what happened, right, through that event, or, you know, questions that will help them describe what happened, as opposed to, you know, the typical teenager, fine, my dad, you know, but how are you doing? So that's just a thought about setting the stage, I guess.
That's a great way.
Comfortable conversation.
Excellent. Excellent suggestion. That's a great tip. Melanie, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And following from what Sandra says, for some of our younger children, they don't, or they struggle with the language to describe their feelings. And sometimes as parents, we may jump in and label it for them prematurely. So we may say, Kelly, are you feeling worried? And they may not be worried, but we are sort of putting that wording on them. Sometimes we can ask them, how are you feeling? And I'm sure everybody's got the response, I don't know how I'm feeling. A really good technique that you can use sometimes is to say, I was just thinking, you know, I could imagine if I was in that situation where I called my friend and they couldn't come out and play with me, I was thinking I might be kind of like upset at them because they're really my good friend and I'm missing them. And because I'm feeling lonely and I want to connect with someone. And because I'm tired of staying at home with my parents. So give them some because reasons, which may help spur some thinking on their part. and it opens the door for them to maybe say, yeah, that is kind of how I'm feeling, and it can start a dialogue. And it really shows that you're connecting with them, as opposed to the child saying, I'm upset, or I'm upset because Kelly won't play with me. And we swoop in to fix things, as Teresa says, and says, oh, don't worry, Kelly's not a nice person anyways. As opposed to, wow, I can appreciate you would feel a little bit upset that Kelly didn't want to play with you. You've been friends for a long time, and you've been home with your mom for days, and I'm not near as much fun as what Kelly is. Connect, forge that connection, and allow them space to find their own feeling instead of us putting our feelings on them.
Great tip right there. I just, Teresa, I think Lucy might have had her hand up, but I'm not sure. No. Okay, Teresa, you're it. Oh, sorry. Teresa, go.
I really love all of that, especially the car, riding in the car, times to chat. Absolutely. I also am struck by how much conversation can flow if we don't say anything. that we don't need the words sometimes. Sometimes it's about just the nod, the body language, if it's, Mom, Kelly was mean at school, and it's, and silence and space, not silence like weird silence, but silence like space. So that they go, oh yeah, she was pretty mean and I didn't like it. And just creating that space for kids. You don't need to have all the time the right question to ask. That's just to add to what everybody's saying. It was fabulous.
Thank you very much. Lucy, I'm going to check back. Did you want to chime in?
And so just a little bit like in terms of the adolescence, sometimes, if we do notice something, sometimes sort of naming it and sort of saying, I've noticed A, B, or C. I am concerned. Is there something we need to sort of talk about or touch base with? And yeah, you might get a shutdown. No, not interested at all. However, what it does communicate, which is important, is that the adolescent, the child knows that you're paying attention, that you are there, you are connecting, even if at that point they're not interested in engaging in the conversation. Super important that they know that you're there, you're paying attention, you're connecting, not differently, right? You're connecting through the nonverbal cues that you pick up, right? And there's a lot of stuff that you can pick up from little people all the way up, right, to young adults if they're still living at home with you, right? You can pick up on those. It's okay to call it and sort of say, I'm here and I'm paying attention. Yeah. Anyway, that's sort of my 2 cents. But.
Absolutely. Because you also don't know when that, as they think and ponder that might come back, right? It just opens up the door. It keeps it open, perhaps. Yeah. So we're going to switch to something that I'm sure everyone has thought about over this last year and a bit. So because just like all of us, adults, kids of all ages, from like teeny tiny all the way up, have had lots of screen time this year. TV, games, computers, you name it. So there's been a lot of screen time, we know that. Probably far more than what normally would occur. And so what are some tips that you might have to help parents in this area, or things that they could be mindful of? And I think it's also important to, for people to understand, not all screen time is bad time, right? And so there's that piece of it as well. But we do want to be mindful. So who would like to jump in? Lucy, maybe would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of the pieces are becoming more salient, and not just with young people and adolescents, but just myself professionally also, is sort of this idea of Zoom fatigue, and not to, sort of out Zoom, but the virtual fatigue that our young people are experiencing. I see it in my own household, sort of that downtime that is super needed. Because if we keep in mind when our children are online, there's, and just what we're doing right now, there's excessive eye contact. They're on all the time, and there are some teachers that require that the child be on so they can see them all the time. So there's never, ever been a time where there's so much focus on someone's face and someone's face is so front and center, and they're, and they see themselves, right? We've never had that before in a classroom setting. That doesn't happen. So that is fatiguing for a lot of kids. A lot of kids will say that it raises their anxiety to the point where they don't even put their cameras on or their mics on, and they just want to blend in. And so it raises sort of the anxiety piece.
I can tell you, just having spent a lot of time on Zoom meetings, looking at yourself is I don't know, discombobulating or something.
It is. Yeah. I know.
Oh, vey.
I know. So you can imagine how, our preteens and our teenagers with all that on them, right? And they know that their colleagues in class can see them, and there's a lot of that on them. So these are things that they raise often, is like high intense eye contact with each other, which we don't typically do a lot of. We have room to look away, or look this way. We don't have that space to do that when we're on. Yes, the seeing ourselves in real time all the time. And they talk a lot about it reduces our mobility. Like if you look in a classroom situation, a child can get up, ask to go to the washroom, maybe go over and chat to the teacher, or go over and see the EA, or maybe go see the friend. There's a lot of moving around, right? And connecting with your peers and teachers. The children don't get that now. They pretty much, I see it here at home. My daughter sits until there's a break.
Yeah,
like,
and
she doesn't get around.
You're really, for those of us that are blessed enough to actually be able to work remotely at home, as adults, we would probably say the same thing. Like you just suddenly your day gets ahead from you for sure. But above and beyond that, we are using, adults and kids are using this some kind of virtual tool to be the play date, or to have fun
Yes.
with a friend, or
Right.
to talk to grandma and grandpa, right? So would anyone else like to kind of take a look at it maybe from that angle about some of the other pieces where we are using it in alternate ways? Kara.
Yeah, so aside from in my own house where I do work virtually from home, and my husband often makes fun of me from going from my medium screen to the TV screen to my phone screen. He's like, which screen are you tired of right now? And there's days where the answer is all of them. When we're thinking about our youngest kids, the Canadian Pediatric Society would say, recommend 0 time for those that are under 2, and those that are 2 to 5 years, that it be an hour long. And really it's that passive screen time. So, it's, I'm watching a TV, I'm, playing on an app, I'm doing all of those kind of passive activities. There is some richness to that screen opportunity when children are watching educational, age-appropriate content with an engaged adult who can then provide context for the real world. They can build language and thinking skills and really kind of scaffold what's happening on that screen, be it a limited time frame that they're going to use it. So things like having a conversation with grandma on Zoom, they're getting that back and forth and that serve and return and that important, kind of interaction that can be a useful tool in the overall toolbox that we have as parents. It would be important to, prioritize what that screen time includes, and then to combine it with, like I said, as part of the toolbox, but that other parts of the toolbox include that active play, that creative opportunities for expression, all of those other things, that this isn't the only tool in the toolbox.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that one? Sandra.
Well, I think this is a tough one, and was before COVID. Talked to a lot of families about screen time and use of screens and phones and that kind of thing. But I guess parents are in charge of the household and the safety and well-being of everyone in the family. So I would just say, please don't hesitate to have these conversations about, as a family, what our agreement's going to be about breaks from screens, and when we use screens, and understand what about that screen use is important. So it's going to be different from your 5-year-old to your 13-year-old. And how do we respect what they need, right, from that, especially when I think our teens particularly are feeling so isolated from their peers. So how do they get what they need, but also how do we have a conversation as a family about what's important, and for parents to know it's okay to say, we need to build some break times in. So how are we going to make it work for you? And how are we going to make it work for me? And how are we going to make it work so that we as a family, I think there's something very important about breaking bread together. And, you know, we have, I know at our house had a rule, like no phones at the table. Nobody checking when they got a bing. You know, if the phone came up from under the table, it's like, but we had a conversation that was the expectation for our family. And yes, it gets tested. But as the adults there, it's okay to hold those boundaries. And it's okay because you've arrived at that as a family agreement. You can post them somewhere. You can just keep them kind of verbal in everybody's consciousness. You know, so we got to make room for how screens meet needs of kids and ourselves, but at the same time, to ensure that there is break time and there's connecting time in different ways with different people.
Excellent.
And I think that raises a good point too, that the adults also need to be conscious of their own screen time. And if their children and youth are coming to them, that becomes the focus, right? That they take a break from the screen time for that, especially if you have an adolescent that is coming to engage you. You certainly want to put that aside and be in that moment with them. I said especially teens, but especially all children.
Absolutely. Andrea?
But we have to challenge ourselves, right? It's
Yeah,
not easy for us as adults.
Absolutely. And I think just to acknowledge that personally and professionally, right? I work from home online. We have 4 other people in the house that are online. So I think that boundary piece is so important. And then it's like having colleagues like Melanie who say to my son, your mom's going to close her computer at 4 o'clock today, right? So even engaging in some of that and having, you know, your colleagues and setting boundaries with one another, because it is very easy to get sucked into that. And you don't know how to bookend your day all of the time because it feels like it's always there, right? So it's absolutely being mindful. And Sandra, I really like that piece around, it's about having the conversation and setting the boundaries as a family unit as well, right? And having those parameters there, knowing that we're all consumed with it, right? And how do we break that up? So.
Yeah, and time seems to have no meaning necessarily the way it did, right? So it just suddenly your day is not 8 hours, it's 12 hours or whatever.
It's very blurry. It can be very blurry.
Yeah. Melanie, did you want to add on before we go to the next one?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I just want to say just a little bit on the other side. I appreciate that we have lots of parents working from home as well and lots of obligations. I know all of those of us who are working from home, we've got meetings and certain things that we can't miss. And there may be times when we don't have as many resources at our fingertips to help with our kids. So don't feel guilty if the only resource that you have available is, you know, sit and watch this for a little bit because mom or dad has to be on this really important meeting. Please don't feel guilty about that. Take Sandra's advice and build some connection time in when you are available. So if you have to be in a meeting from 10 until noon in the morning and you cannot, you don't have other options for your children, have lunch together. Make a point of having lunch together. Everybody shuts their screen down and has lunch together. Make a point at 4 o'clock when you've got a break. the family goes out for a walk together. But we do appreciate, and we've all been in that boat where there are certain obligations in working from home that you cannot be available in the way that you may want to be. Don't feel guilty if you have limited options, and sometimes you have to say to your child, here, please go and play a video game because I have a really important meeting that I have to do. Give yourself some grace and space on that.
So I had said at the beginning we'd take questions at the end, but you just actually hit a question that just came up on our screen, which was about how parents are working from home and it's all they can do to have the screen time if they're in a meeting. And I think that people need to hear it's okay, give yourself some grace. Because even if we know it and we believe it, maybe we don't truly believe it. And it really is true. People are doing the best they can, and cut yourself some slack there. Yeah. Kara?
Yeah, because we're in a season. We're in a season right now. The season isn't going to last forever. So, right now we're just in a season. And
That is lovely. Yes. And seasons change. And hopefully, and a new season is here or coming. So, which is a lovely way to go to the next question, which is really about, we're thinking forward now. We're thinking summer, because summer is this close, and then after that I'm going to follow up with a little bit very specific sort of back to school for September, because I think that's probably on lots of folks' minds as well. But what are some of the things that adults can do now and over the summer months, both to think about providing supports and services and opportunities for kids in the summer, but also thinking forward to school and maybe preparing them or getting the kids thinking about going back to school with a healthy mindset, etc. So we'll start from like now to September, and then we'll go on a little bit about September onwards afterwards. Who would like to jump in about what we can do over the next coming months? Sandra.
Take a break. Everybody needs a break. People are weary and tired, and as best you can, to just take a break. Get outdoors as much as you can. Move, just move. We've just been talking about, the screen activity from work obligations, learning, and connecting is very sedentary. And I think our bodies, with the weather coming, we're just yearning to move and to just do that as much as possible, together, or as sort of pairs and families, and read together and craft together and bake together, and just, it's the summer can, it has its challenges, I think, sometimes in terms of kids feeling bored, but it is a time to just let some of the rigor of the schedule go and keep the important pieces in your day, to ground everybody and to reconnect, but to really let it go. We have some, I think I gave you the web page for our board, but there's a LDCSB, Mental Health and Wellbeing COVID-19 resources for students and families, and there we have some tip sheets about activities for families to do at home, particularly when there's still restrictions in place. And then in the return to school piece, we can talk about that later, but we continue to update it with resources for transitions and back to school, and for sort of some back to school tips and advice.
I'm going to tell everyone I know that Sandra says we have permission to relax over the summer, because you know what, that might be the best takeaway of the whole darn night, because everyone just needs to breathe a little bit and to have to be able to step back from it's been a long hard year for sure. Would anyone else like to, hard to follow, that was the nugget right there, but if anyone else would like to weigh in, please. Kara?
So I might just add, we're very fortunate in Oxford County to have some really great trails at our disposal. And so there are lots of outdoor opportunities. We have lots of parks, you know, to really kind of go out and take advantage of those outdoor spaces. You know, as I mentioned earlier, the early on programs with Oxford County Library is intending to host programs in the park once we can join with you know, numbers of people, then we'll be doing that. And then we'll also be offering some stroller walks. We're just going to crash into communities and, you know, grab a wagon, grab a stroller, and we'll go for walks with you. Another, you know, kind of secret coming out of the bag is we've got some story strolls that we're going to be kind of putting onto some trails. So as you walk through the trail, you can read a story, and we'll be popping up in communities to offer that as an option as well. And then just again, for those children that are starting school for the first time in September, early on is hosting a Kindergarten Here We Come program. So the Ontario Kindergarten program is based on 4 kind of broad learning areas, which, you know, include some of the things that we've been talking about tonight with self-regulation and well-being, belonging and contributing, literacy and math behaviors, and problem solving and innovating. So this Kindergarten Here We Come program is a 4-session program, free for families. It just provides some ideas and activities that you can use with your child to support these learning areas in a very fun and creative and age appropriate way as you get ready for that next learning adventure. So we'll just, you know, have chats about, you know, it's not about your child knowing all of their letters before they get to kindergarten. They have a 2-year kindergarten program to learn those things, but can they ask the teacher what it is that they need? Can they express their, you know, the need to go to the washroom? Do they have those self-help skills to be able to do that on their own? Can they open up their own containers at lunchtime? Can they do all of those things for themselves? So really just, you know, taking the academia pressure off prior to them starting academia, and knowing that there's a 2-year kindergarten program that is going to support them and engage them and scaffold all that learning for them when they get there. So those things aren't a requirement prior to the program.
Yeah. Andrea.
Yeah, just quickly. So just to highlight for Thames Valley District School Board, a resource that we have built out and send out to our students and families is called Together in the Valley. So it's really, we just highlight, we provide some validating words, and it's about strategies and things you can do and showing yourself some gratitude. And then we also highlight the resources that are available to you, to either students or families as well, if they are needing those kind of supports. And so for June, we've kind of extended that newsletter, and we've included a bingo card that was actually developed by our students, and it has a ton of activities that you could either do within a week, or you could, you know, spread them out over the course of the summer. So if you struggle with some of those ideas, or, you know, you're getting tired of the same things, there's other options as well. So that resource will be launched in a few weeks as well, out to students and families as well, and be available on our website.
So while we hear about sort of getting ready for the little ones for kindergarten, for preparing over the summer for back to school, what about those that are going to be starting high school in the fall? Because I mean, starting high school is always, I mean, it creates angst in almost all kids, mostly about the darn combination lock. That's always like a big stressor, but I know it goes beyond that. And so what are some of the things that the school boards might have to help prepare those incoming high schoolers, or even help prepare the parents of the incoming high schoolers? Melanie?
Yeah, thanks for that, Kelly. So there will be a range of programs offered through Thames Valley District School Board to help with high school transition. Every year we do offer something called High School Here I Come, which is, we're hoping it won't be virtual this year. It will be held in August, and we're hoping it will be in person. And it will cover everything from finding your way around the building to opening that combination lock that Kelly's talking about. We also, if you are particularly concerned about any of your children who may be transitioning into high school or into any grade, we certainly have a team of our school mental health professionals who will be available over the summer that you can connect with. We will be releasing more information on that, and it will be posted on our board website as well in the newsletter Andrea just spoke about, in terms of how to access those resources. And even doing little things like right now, we know you can't go into the schools, but even driving your child by their new high school, planning a route to get to the new school that they're going to. There may be an opportunity over the summer for some of your children to enroll in things like summer school. We do have some literacy and some math camps happening. And again, depending on when we open up, some of that may be held actually physically in a school. So they may be able to have the opportunity to actually get into the school and to see it and to walk around in it sometime in July or August. I think also validating, as we said earlier, that, you know what, it could be anxiety provoking and scary to go to high school. It is, even when we're not in a pandemic. And just finding some of the things that they may be concerned about, validating, normalizing some of that, and engaging them in brainstorming some solutions as to what may help reduce their anxiety during that period of time.
Okay. Sorry, Sandra, go ahead.
Well, I just, at LDCSB, we do have some programs for August, some workshops, some group programs that will be posted on the website for helping with transitions. And we have a group for grades 7 to 12. They won't all be together in one group. Workshops called Back to School Basics, to really recognize that some students have really been out of school buildings for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And that can feel like brand new and can feel a bit of a challenge. So we're just finalizing what some of those offerings will be. They'll go home, and our grade 9s, we have, last year there was a great creativity and invention about virtual tours of the schools, and the students answered in a video kind of format, and because they know they had those kind of questions, and try to anticipate that. To they couldn't welcome them in person, but they could welcome them virtually. And often those are posted on the high school website, those kind of orientation welcoming videos. And there's, you know, often really special attention to welcoming the grade 9s. And this year we're thinking also the grade 10s, that some of them will feel like they're going to high school for the first time too. So, you know, we want to support all of the students as they come back. And I know TVDSB as well, but our students, the upper year students, are really active in really trying to welcome the new students and the younger students and make them feel welcome, and, you know, yeah.
Which is so fantastic that kids can have that opportunity. And so it's a great way to kind of, our last question before we get to, there's a couple there from the audience, but I think the last thing that maybe are on some people's minds are really kind of about what school, not necessarily what it's going to look like in September, because of course none of you have a crystal ball, but we're thinking it's going to be more normal. And I'm sure some families are worried that perhaps their child has perhaps fallen behind or needs a helping hand. And so you know, you have so many supports and services in both school boards and of course the other school board as well. Like there are wonderful supports available for families and for children. But when you think about what September and sort of going forward is going to look like, can you give us a little overview of maybe sort of the commitment to making sure that you're going to take the kids where they're at and lift them up if they need that extra bit? Andrea, go.
I'll chime in here. Yeah, so I think you know, it's when this comes up, I think back to basics, right? And it's about learning renewal and how do we set the stage so that learning can actually happen. I think learning is going to come down the road, so it's really about how do we, you know, we have to be really intentional, and we will be intentional about how to fostering safety. You know, what does safety look like as we enter school, right? How are we welcoming? How are we understanding where people are at and really getting to know our students? And I'm also thinking about staff because they're re-entering too, right? So being mindful of that, establishing that solid foundation of safety, and really it's about reconnecting, right? And building and reestablishing relationships, right? And really digging our heels into some of that, right? And really connecting with folks so that we can get to this place where we're feeling a little more regulated and we're feeling comfortable about where we are, so that then we can learn, right? And that's going to take time, and that's okay, right? I think that it goes back to that grace and space piece that everybody needs to be mindful of and think about. And, you know, the learning gaps, those things, kids will catch up. You know, at the end of the day, I think of my son and I think, you know what, they will be fine. At the end of the day, we're going to figure this out and we're going to navigate. And I think as humans, we just really need to be mindful about how do we ensure we're entering the space and that people are feeling comfortable and safe in that space, and how are we really connecting and being really intentional about that. So I know that's, and I'm sure Sandra, it's probably similar with the Catholic board as well, right? Establishing those foundations. So I think that's really key around the safety and the connection.
Excellent.
Yeah, Andrew, I think that whole concept about getting reconnected and getting to know the students again and where they're at, because we do know that our students may have had really different experiences through the pandemic and through the stay-at-home orders. And, you know, for us to not expect it to have been the same for everyone, and to get to know where each student is at and understand where they're at, so that we can kind of start where they're at, right? And make a commitment to, okay, this is where you're at, and this is where you're at, and we're going to start there, and we're going to come along in the learning journey. But I really like what Andrea said about, and I think both boards are very committed to that reconnecting, feeling safe, feeling welcomed, feeling like you belong in your class, in your school, is what's needed in order for learning to happen. And I think there's a strong commitment to that. We don't necessarily know. We don't have crystal balls. We don't know how things will evolve. But I think it was Margaret Wheatley who said something like, we can plan for the future and we can navigate forward if we pay attention to relationship and we walk the path together. And, you know, I think that's what we're all trying to do.
You know, I think that is a fantastic way to sort of end the formal Q&A part, because I think if I still had children in school and was at all worried, that actually would soothe me to think that you are going to be there, that the teachers, the other school staff are going to be there to meet kids where they are and make sure they get what they need to move forward. And it's going to look like a lot of different things, but that's going to be the focus. And, you know, everything and anything we do in this world is always relationship based. And so at the heart of it, that's not just what we want to do as parents, but that's what we want, that those positive relationships with teachers and school secretaries and principals and neighbors and everyone else. I mean, that it really goes back to, it takes a village for all of us, right? So we did have a couple questions. Some we've answered actually as we've gone on, but one I think is a really, I'm going to ask you two in particular, but this one I think is a really interesting one, and I want to make sure we get to it before our time is up here this evening. And so I'll just read it out. Many families are following different rules regarding government stay-at-home orders. And it is difficult when it feels like everyone else isn't necessarily following those rules. So this is a parent or caregiver looking for strategies for youth so that they can help to understand that there are different rules in different families. And because I think that could be a real challenge for teens who say, well, Susie's allowed to do this and I'm not allowed to do this. That, it's that kind of thing. And that's hard with teens at the best of times, but this is probably not the best of times for that. So would anyone have some tips or strategies or even some comments that would help families that are dealing with this? Because I have to think this is something that most families are experiencing now. The wheels are turning. Everyone's thinking. Teresa, go.
Well, a part of that answer is that you never know what people are coping with. You never know what other families, what their circumstances are. So reassuring that for kids that all we really know is ourselves and our family, and we're making the best decision that we can right now with the information that we have for the people that we love and care about. And we don't know if it's 100% right. We don't know if it'll change tomorrow, but today, this is the best decision we can make for our family right now. And that's what every family is doing, is making the best decision that they can make for their families with the information that they have and the circumstances that they are coping with right now.
Would anyone else like to speak to that at all?
So just to piggyback, it's so individual to families. So it's hard for us as professionals to say, do A or B or C. It's very difficult without knowing the context of how this question is being asked, right? So just like Teresa said, we don't know the situation in people's homes. You could have sickly grandparents, a sickly brother or sister, right? There's so many other factors we don't know. So yeah, we do the best we can with the information we have at the time that we have it, which is true of life in general.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Andrea?
I think too, it goes back to that piece Sandra was talking about earlier. It's about the boundaries as a family. What are our boundaries and limitations? And it's about explaining the rationale, the why, right? Here's why, and like Teresa said, and here's why it looks like this today or why it might look like this tomorrow, right? And I think it's, what is that, what's informing the decision, and being transparent with our kids about why we're making that decision, right? There's going to be some that they like and some that they don't like, and that's the reality. There's some that I like and there's some that I don't like, right? There's pros and cons to all of them. So I think the boundaries and the limitations and being really clear and explicit about the why is super important.
So because I say so is not a good explanation of the why. We
want to work at my house. It does not work in my home.
Okay, Melanie?
Yeah, and I think just the other piece, which we've talked about a lot tonight, is just to validate that feeling that they're having. And you know what, I can appreciate that this may not feel fair to you because you see that someone has something that we don't. And just to recognize what the youth may be feeling can go a long way.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I almost lost you there for a moment. So the next question we have is something a little more specific, but I think there are some families that certainly have had to go through something like this, and so it's, how do we support families who are grieving and who have lost a family member, as a son, a brother. I mean, sadly, we know that people have had loss over this year. So this is hard during normal times, and even more so during the pandemic. And so, do you have any suggestions and or supports that you might want to reference for families that are going through this grieving process, or for friends who are trying to support families that are going through some grief? Teresa.
I think going back to that being with, holding that space, knowing that this is something that's hard and sad, or it could be, and there is no fixing it. And there is sharing in it, and being with people and supporting, and just being there and holding that space. So there's that for loved ones and friends and family to be able to do. And there are professional supports and help for that, because grief is not just grief. It's not just sad. It's complicated sometimes, right? There's complicated feelings about our relationships, and our understanding of what happened, and the impact that it has can be really complicated and really tough to navigate on your own, because we can get stuck in our own thoughts and feelings. And it can really help to talk to somebody who's outside of the family, who's outside of the friends, who's outside of everyone who has been impacted. So, because it's hard to share sometimes when you're feeling like I'm going to burden somebody who's also sad and grieving. So it can be really beneficial to reach out to a mental health professional. And if it's a child or youth, Welcome is certainly there for that, to support children and youth and their families in that grief process. Yeah.
And we do have a lot of, there's walk-in counseling, there's call-in talking counseling. I mean, we have other supports, and Lucy, I'll turn it over to you in a sec, but what we, I think what we know about grief is grief doesn't follow a schedule, and grief isn't, a very limited period of time, and everyone grieves differently. And so I think the advice to perhaps reach out for some support is really good advice now during this pandemic, when things are perhaps even more complicated. But that's just good support and advice all around, because it's overwhelming at times, grief. Yeah. Lucy.
So the piece around ritual, right? We've lost ritual during the pandemic in terms of grieving, and how isolating that can be for people. Because in ritual, right, that we either celebrate the life of the person we have lost or mourn the life of the person we've lost. Ritual. So, if people are looking at that, how do you make ritual, right? Make meaning of your loss, and in this case would be very personal and personal to your family, given that the ways we sort of mourn our losses are gone, like those public rituals, they're gone. So we kind of have to recreate those for ourselves, and whether we do that with the support of a professional, or we do that with the support of a spiritual leader, or with sort of extended family members, it's important to value and validate ritual that we've lost through this pandemic, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is 8:29. We said we would be done at 8:30. We've answered the questions in the chat box. We've gotten through most of sort of our conversation pieces where we want it to go. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to everyone at home who has tuned in and who is joining us, who gave up some of your private time, your downtime. I hope that you found this really helpful. I hesitate to say enjoyable, mostly that I hope that you got lots of aha moments to help you along your parenting path or your caregiver path. Our panelists gave a great overview with general information on a lot of different topics, but also some specifics, lots of references and resources on the side in the chat. And so please use those. And I think, again, if you've noticed specific changes, really any kind of very worrisome things, reach out. Help is in our community. If it's a little, nagging that you want some advice, there's help. If you're really worried, there's help. I think the message to take away is you are not alone. There are services. There's no wrong door. Reach out. Someone is there to give you the support that you need, whether it's individual or through group work, etc. There's no wrong door. And I will just remind people, you can go to a variety of websites. You can even call 211. If you're not familiar, 211 is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week information and referral source, and they can make sure that you get the right connection to reach out to. So there are all kinds of wonderful supports across our county. We're very fortunate. So please use them. That's what they're there for yourself, a friend, anyone. And I would like to thank our panelists and your organizations. You are all key pieces of our community and our relationship in raising children and educating children, and your work it's immense, and we are so grateful for the love and the compassion and the empathy and the concern that you and all of your colleagues have in caring for our children in our community. You shared a lot tonight, and lots of really, really great takeaways. I think not just for children and youth, but for parents of all ages. I think we can all work on communication and finding that, sitting in that space. I had lots of takeaways and ahas, so I'm hoping others did as well. And I would like to thank Journey Well Health and Wellness for sponsoring this evening, because this does require some resources, and we are so grateful that they stepped up to help United Way host this, to put this on. They're a wonderful community partner and a great volunteer, and we are really appreciative of their support. I know that people think of United Way in particular as fundraisers, and we do that, obviously, and we raise money and we invest it in all kinds of wonderful, vital social human services in our community, some of which have been on the panel tonight, some are not, but kids and children and youth and parents are a critical pillar for us. But above and beyond those investments, this is the kind of thing that we believe we have a role to play at United Way, to make sure we're building capacity, that we're supporting the community, and that we're helping people know about resources, because sometimes resources are just really unknown, and we want to make sure that people are aware. So thank you for joining us, and again, thank you to Journey Well Health and Wellness for letting us do this. Thank you everyone for participating. Panelists, you guys were fantastic, just fantastic. I can't thank each and every one of you enough. And as we wrap up, I will just say again, a heartfelt thank you. And for everyone out there, please know you're never alone. There's always someone here to help, and never, ever hesitate to reach out. So thank you all. Good night and be well. And I am hoping that September, with back to school and back to everything, is going to be just a spectacular experience for everyone out there, because that is really what we need, that positive hope for those better days. Good night, everyone.
Great. Thank you.